A 6'7" woman stepped off. The town's tallest man tipped his hat and smiled wide. The stage door of the Wells Fargo coach stuck the way it always stuck in August heat, the wood swollen tight in the frame, and I was the one who always had to come pry it because nobody else in Cooper's Bend could reach the top hinge without standing on a crate. I had my hand up on it before the driver even called down, my knuckles finding the warped spot from memory, and I gave it the half-turn, half-yank it needed, and it groaned open. She came out of that dark little box like she was unfolding. I want to say I didn't stare. I did. Everybody did. She had to duck her head clean under the door frame, which nobody ducks for, and she straightened up on the step and kept straightening, until she was looking near level into my own eyes, which nobody in 19 years had managed without a ladder or a horse. "You're the one who fixes the door," she said, not a question. "Door's stubborn," I said. "Heat does that to wood." "Heat does that to a lot of things," she said, and stepped down past me into the dust, and I caught for half a second no more the rest of the street going quiet around her the way it goes quiet around me. I knew that particular quiet. I'd lived inside it my whole life. The held breath, the little laugh somebody swallows, the kids who go still and then can't help themselves. Nobody laughed at her. They just stared, same as at me, and I felt something in my chest shift sideways that I didn't have a name for yet. Her name was Eliza Vance. Widow, the station master's manifest said, though I didn't read manifests, I just heard him say it loud enough for the whole platform, the way men say a woman's marital status like it's public information they're entitled to. Widow Vance, come to take over her late husband's freight contract, on account of there being nobody else left to run it, and she wasn't fixing to sell what he'd built for nothing. I run the livery. Since my pa died and left it to me, on account of I was the only one of his 4 sons who could lift a draft horse off its feet if it went down wrong in the traces, which I have done twice, both times with men standing around hollering instead of helping because they were a foot and a half shorter and had nothing to offer but noise. I'm 6'11". I duck through my own front door. I sleep on a bed I built myself because no bed in any catalog reaches where I need it to reach. I have not danced at a town social since I was 17 years old, and Sarah Whitlock's mother pulled her off the floor mid-step, rather than let her finish a turn with me in front of God and everybody, like I might do something to her daughter just by being built the way I'm built. I tell you all that so you understand what it was. The morning Eliza Vance stepped down off that coach and had to look up maybe 2 inches to find my face. 2 inches. After 31 years of looking down at the whole world, 2 inches felt like nothing and like everything both at once. She needed her freight wagon serviced, wheel hub was loose, axle wanted greasing, and one of her 2 draft horses had thrown a shoe somewhere outside of Larkspur. She didn't ask if I could handle it. She told me what was wrong with the rig like she expected me to already know how to fix it, which I did, and she didn't hover or fuss or ask was I sure I could manage, the way some women do around a man my size, half admiring and half nervous, like I'm a bull they're hoping stays gentle. She just said, "I'll be at the Mercantile an hour. That enough time?" "Should be," I said. "Good," she said, and walked off down the street with her trunk over one shoulder she'd hauled off the coach herself before I could offer. Because I expect she's spent her whole life having men either ignore the offer or make a show of it, and she's tired of both. I want to tell this next part out of order because that's how I carry it in pieces, not a straight line. So I'll tell you about her husband first, though I didn't learn it till later. He'd been a normal-sized man. Average, she told me once, sitting on an overturned bucket in my barn while I worked a hot shoe with the bellows going, average in every particular, which she said like it was a compliment to him and didn't mean it unkind. He'd married her because her father had freight contracts and good land, not because he wanted a wife 2 heads taller than every other woman in the county and most of the men. She knew that. She'd known it the whole 11 years they were married, knew it the way you know a draft is coming through a wall you can't quite locate, a coldness you live with because the house is still a house. He'd died of a fever 2 winters back. She'd buried him and kept the freight line running herself with 2 hired men who quit inside a year, because they didn't like taking orders from a woman built like she was. Like her size was an insult on top of the original insult of her being in charge at all. So she'd come to Cooper's Bend to start fresh somewhere nobody knew the particulars. Except a town's a town, word travels with the dust. She came back the next day for her horses, and the day after that for a length of harness leather, And inside 2 weeks I'd worked out that the freight business didn't actually require her standing in my barn most evenings while I oiled tack or reset a shoe. But there she was anyway, sitting on that bucket, talking or not talking, both of us fine either way. I remember the night the subject came up plain. Rain coming down hard enough to drum the tin roof into a kind of music, and she had her boots up on a crate, hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee I'd poured her, and she said, out of nowhere, not looking at me, "Do you ever get tired of people deciding what you are before you've said a word?" I set down the bridle I was mending. "Every day of my life," I said, "since I was about 9 years old and stopped being a cute big kid and started being a thing people pointed at." "They point at me too," she said. "Different reason, same look on their face." "I noticed." "I figured you would." She turned the cup in her hands. "My husband used to ask me to walk a half step behind him in town, said it looked better." She said it flat, no anger left in it, just worn smooth like a stone you've turned over too many times to feel its edges anymore. 11 years, I walked a half step behind a man so he wouldn't have to be reminded I was taller. I didn't say anything for a while. The rain kept at the roof. "I built this bed myself," I said finally, which wasn't an answer to anything, but it was true, and it was the kind of thing a man says when he's trying to hand somebody a piece of himself without making a speech of it. Couldn't buy one long enough. Had to learn carpentry I didn't want to learn just so I'd have somewhere to sleep without my feet hanging off the end. She looked at me then. Really looked the way people mostly don't, going right past the size of me to the man underneath it, like she was taking an inventory and the size was just one line on a long list, not the whole accounting. "Show me," she said. "I want to be plain here, because this wasn't what you might think." She came back to my place, the little room behind the livery I'd built up out of scrap and stubbornness, and she sat on the edge of that bed I'd made with my own 2 hands, board by board, and she ran her palm flat along the headboard the way you'd run a hand along a horse's flank to feel if it was sound. "You built this so you'd fit," she said. "Had to. Most men just complain that the world wasn't made for them and leave it at that." She looked up at me. "You went and built your own world instead." I didn't have an answer for that one either. I've never been a man of many words, on account of mostly when I open my mouth in a crowd people are too busy looking up at me to listen to what's coming out of it. So I learned young to say less. She stood up off the bed, and we were close enough then that she didn't have to look up hardly at all, and there was a long quiet where neither one of us moved, the kind of quiet that has a decision sitting inside it, and then she put her hand flat on my chest, not pulling me in, just resting it there, feeling the heartbeat under my shirt the way she'd felt the bed frame for soundness. "I'm not looking to be anybody's secret," she said, "and I'm not walking a half step behind another man as long as I live." "Wouldn't ask you to," I said. "Couldn't even if I wanted, you'd still be taller than my shoulder." That got a laugh out of her, short and surprised, like it had been a long while since one came loose. The town found out the way towns find out everything, which is to say all at once and with a great deal of opinion attached. Mrs. Whitlock, same Whitlock who'd pulled her daughter off the dance floor 14 years back, made a point of saying, loud outside the mercantile, that it was a fitting match, the 2 town freaks finding each other, like God had stacked the deck for comedy. Eliza heard her. I was standing right there, holding 2 sacks of feed I didn't need both hands for, and I watched Eliza go very still and very quiet, and I braced for her to walk away like she usually walked away from talk like that, head up, ignoring it because ignoring it was the only dignity left to take. She didn't walk away. She turned around, full around, and looked down, actually down, a rare thing for her, at Mrs. Whitlock, and said, in a voice that carried the whole length of the street, "I have been married to an average man who was ashamed of me every day for 11 years. I will take this one, freak and all, because he built his own bed rather than ask the world to shrink, and he has never once in 3 months asked me to walk behind him." Then she crossed the dirt street to where I was standing with my feed sacks, and she put her hand on my arm in front of the mercantile, in front of Mrs. Whitlock, in front of God and the whole watching town, and she didn't say another word. She just stood there next to me, the 2 of us a full foot above the crowd, and let everybody look their fill. I have thought about that moment more than any other moment of my life. Not the wedding, which came later and was small and plain the way we both wanted it. Not the first winter, hard as it was, with the freight business slow and money tight. That moment, on the street, her hand on my arm and her chin up and her voice still ringing a little in the air. 31 years I'd been the tallest thing in any room I walked into, and people had looked at that and only ever seen the size of it. She looked at the same thing and saw a man who built a world that fit him instead of complaining the regular one didn't, and she put her hand on my arm in daylight and dared the whole town to say a word. We run the livery and the freight line together now, out of the same yard, 2 big wagons and a herd of draft horses that don't spook at either one of us the way some skittish riding stock used to. I built a second headboard onto that bed a few years back, wider, on account of there being 2 of us in it most nights, and some nights 3 when the boy climbs in between us during a thunderstorm, a long-legged child of 7 who's already taller than most boys twice his age and isn't ashamed of it yet, on account of his mother won't allow shame in that house, not for size, not for anything. Evenings, when the work's done, we sit out front of the livery on a bench I built extra long and watch the road, and she leans her head on my shoulder, which she can do now without bending hardly at all, and I think about the swollen door I pried open that first morning, how it took the both of us, her stepping down and me reaching up that final half-turn to get it open at all.